Coming up on a very special edition of Democracy Does, the Civic Power Playbook, we go to Charleston, South Carolina. We the People, a conversation that moves us forward, a community discussion where we meet leaders who are making change happen.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Robin Hamilton, and I cannot tell you how appreciative I am that you all decided to come here today. This really, really means a lot to me. I am the host of a podcast called Democracy Does, the Civic Power Playbook. And what that does is it breaks down policies that are happening in the country, and it distills it down so that people will really understand how it is impacting them on a daily basis. And the reason why I started this was because my background is as a journalist. I worked in local news up and down the country. And the longer I was in local news, the more I was finding a bit of a void in terms of what's happening in the seats of power and how that is actually being applied to people on the day-to-day. And so I've been out of the local news game for a couple years, and I decided to start this podcast recently because I felt like the information gap was widening and there was more and more disinformation and misinformation. People are operating in silos, and I don't think it's really serving anybody very well. That being said, I know there are a ton of political podcasts out there. I am not part of that. I do not want to be part of political theater. That's not me. That's not what I want to do. I want to be a person who provides information. I like to think of what I do as a connector, a purveyor of information. And so We the People, a conversation that moves us forward, is part of the podcast. It's an extension of that. So usually my podcast is national, but it's streaming. I talk in my office to people all over the country, but rarely do I actually get to go to communities and meet the change agents that are on the ground. And why I like doing this locally is because you get to see the people who are making things happen. And then for me, I can be an amplifier, if you will, in terms of how policies are affecting people locally and how that can be applied nationally. But ultimately, I also want people to feel empowered. That's something I feel very strongly about, because when I go around and talk to people, there are some people who are not very happy with how things are happening. And a lot of people feel as if, well, what do? I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should give up. Do I leave? And then where do we go? And so the point of talking to people and having this podcast and talking to incredible activists like the ones who I'm going to introduce you to on this panel is to let people feel empowered. That if you are not sure what to do or where to go, there are people who can maybe guide you and be sources of inspiration as well as information in terms of what you can do and what you can change. So I say all of that because I want to introduce our terrific panel. I mean, not only have they been kind to me, they did not think I was some random crazy person who just called them and said, hey, I want to have a luncheon. I'm not from here, but do you guys want to come over? And they were willing to play ball. So I'm greatly, greatly appreciative of that. So I'll just go down. We'll start with Mr. Jimmy Bailey, who was so kind when he answered my call. He's incredible. He is the founder and past president of YEScarolina. What I was so impressed with about YEScarolina is it moves from what do I do to policy to action. It teaches entrepreneurship to youth in this area. And what's great is it's actually implemented. So more than 1,000 teachers have implemented a curriculum for teaching entrepreneurship to young kids in the area, which is incredibly powerful when they're trying to find your way. Now, Jimmy has done a lot of amazing things. He was in the State House for 3 terms, is that correct? And he also ran a successful real estate company, and you were also awarded the Order of the Palmetto, which is the highest civilian honor you can receive in this state. So he's done a lot. I'm very fortunate to have him. Oh, by the way, his work is in this book, The Spirit of Outreach, YEScarolina, Success Stories. And let's talk about Divine Moment. One of his success stories is right here. So yes, sorry, I had to call calling you out. I was so moved. He didn't even know that. Jimmy got the book for me. I see this picture of this adorable little boy, and it's him when he was 14. So very impressive.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Next on our panel, we have Mackie Krawcheck Moore. She is co-founder of Sino. Silence is not an option. And what's significant about this is they are all about creating civil and civic discourse, about saying, hey, this isn't right. We need to address what's happening, and we can all do something about it. It's about how we use our collective voice to make a change. Now, Mackie says, oh, this is just a new thing that we started, but this is a powerhouse of an organization, because it's true. So often, so many of us are talking in silos, yelling at each other, and nothing is really happening. This is about how we bridge that gap and move towards a place of understanding. She also knows the nonprofit space. She's been a dedicated public service. She was an executive director of a nonprofit focused on eliminating domestic violence, and she is just deeply embedded and devoted to the community. So thank you so much for
having me.
Yeah. And we have Audrey KS Lane. She is the co-executive director of the E3 Foundation. She focuses on so much economic and social justice. Her organization does incredible work. They are about educating, empowering, and elevating communities of color. They've had some significant milestones, which we are going to talk about. So you got to brag. You got some bragging rights. And I just want to mention, just a couple of years ago, they won a Kellogg Foundation. They've just been really making incredible progress. So I just want to welcome all of them to.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, did you guys know every single person on this panel? No, you didn't. Okay, that's great. See, that's a win already. Because I feel like this is a time to be a connector, and that's what I want. So just so you know, I want to ask the panels some questions, but I really want to open it up for conversation as well, because I'd love to hear what you're doing, and the whole point is not to just talk about it, but discuss how we can share and make actionable steps. And then this is something that's going to be shown nationally too. And I think the fact that people are so collaborative here, I've been amazed at the cross-pollination when I was just meeting people who are in this room, that it's inspiring to know what can happen when people come from so many different walks of life. All right, so since you're sitting closest to me, I am going to ask you a question first.
Okay.
Well, first, just tell us a little bit more about E3. And let's talk about your milestone, the big milestone that you recently accomplished.
Yeah. Thank you for having me first, Robin. And the museum legitimized you when I got the random
Yeah. Same.
the help. You know, you gotta have like a anchor. Yeah. So I said, if you're in the museum, then she got to know somebody in Charleston. So I appreciate the opportunity. I am one of the founding partners of E3, Educate, Empower, Elevate, and we are 5 years old next month.
Wow.
Yeah. So 2 Black women who were former senior level leaders, Jimmy in the Charleston County School District. We won't talk about what you asked me about, but who decided that the systems that our families were just, we kind of like bobbling from, all inequitable, needed voices and they have their own voices, but how do we help them elevate their voices? How do we help them use their own agency? So a lot of times we were sitting in rooms where individuals were like, like this, we're talking about what could we do, but never asking the individuals who were most impacted. So our work is rooted and grounded in bringing those voices to the table and helping to co-create their own solutions. And so it's very different than a lot of other philanthropic efforts. You can move with the greatest intention, but you're not going to do anything different if it doesn't change the systems which we are all a part of. And so we'll talk about some of those systems, including, some of the things that are happening today around SNAP benefits and how that actually, we talk about an ecosystem for racial and economic justice and how we are all a part of that, and it's not just those individuals who are impacted. So we're excited. We're celebrating 5 years in a time where we never could envision where we are today as a country, as a community. We just knew something was needed and was absent in Charleston in particular and in the South. So our mission is really rooted in how do you do this work in the South, because it's very different. And as a Southern girl, I'm from Columbia, I know that it is important to continue to uplift that. And I just don't want to miss that walking in this room, some of the programs that we're doing, but one of the ones that we're just excited about is around Freedom Schools. And the founder of Freedom Schools is Marian Wright Edelman. And this is her quote that's on the wall.
Wow.
And I've never been in this space, so it's a very plan. It was not planned at all. So education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it. I could not have said it better. So we're excited, celebrating 5 years, rooted and rising.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
really
you.
a big deal.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the SNAP benefits, because I do believe that people don't quite understand the magnitude in which the withholding of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, those funds, are going to mean for people. I will say, when I was doing research, I saw some comments online that some people would say, well, that's a bunch of people who are lazy, who don't work, who just are taking handouts, so who cares? But there is a whole ecosystem. Can you talk about your thoughts on that, and what is your organization doing in regards to that?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate that we really pride ourselves on the credibility that we have as an organization and connect to the right system so that we can then be a pass-through to the community. So I just wanted to set some parameters around who is the beneficiaries of SNAP, because a lot of times we, intentionally or unintentionally have this picture of who that person is. It's families, it's children. 40% of recipients of SNAP are children. It's multiracial. What does that mean? The largest recipients of SNAP benefits are white working families at 35%, then followed by Black at 25%, then Hispanic at 16%. Most of the families are working families. Then you have elderly at 17% or 19%. College students are also receiving SNAP benefits, and also non-elderly disabled individuals, okay? So that's who is receiving SNAP. What's happening, when you think about SNAP, the S stands for supplemental. It is not equal to all the food and nutrition that someone will get or that a family is paying for in a month. So you have to be well below the poverty line. I think it's like 200% or something like that. So it's important to know that on average, a family of four spends about $800+ a month. The average SNAP benefit is around $400+ a month. So they're on a given day, without any of the issues that we're going to talk about, there's still a gap of $400+. And so in our state of South Carolina this year, our legislators did not approve $600 million worth of line items that go to nonprofit organizations who also help SNAP recipients, other recipients' families. So even without the shutdown, it was still a dire situation, because the places where families would have gone were already suffering and trying to figure out how they were going to put it together, okay? So the impact is all of us. Billions of dollars if if SNAP goes away, billions of dollars does not go into the grocery store ecosystem. What happens? How do you get groceries to the actual shelf? You have distribution, you have manufacturing, and retail at the grocery store. Those are jobs. Those are also families. So if you don't have billions of dollars of those benefits going into the grocery store, I don't know if y'all have been shopping recently. I'm making some decisions, right? And we're a federal household as well. So we were, impacted as well. And when you see your milk go from $3.50 to $5 something, I think a lot of us are pausing. So the ecosystem is not just about the beneficiaries of SNAP, but it's about those individuals, all of us, who are going to be impacted. So as an organization, we we want to make sure that individuals have the information that they need. We are not a direct service organization, but we are a conduit. We know that we have credibility. We don't take that for granted. So if we say, this is a resource, we've vetted that resource. We have multiple digital platforms. Some are public, some are not intentionally. And we thought about making some of them public, and now I'm like, well, I'm glad we didn't make it public. Because, nonprofits are also being targeted too. Right. You'll notice a lot of nonprofits are taking their pictures of the staff off of their websites. They're taking their funders off of the websites because there are a lot of, really interesting people. That's the best way I'm gonna say that right now. Yes. So we just want to continue to connect with what is happening, but also continue to be truth tellers around who is impacted and what this really means. And then it's a direct connection to our advocacy work that we continue to do.
Thank you for that. And thank you for breaking that down, exactly what that means, because I don't think a lot of people understand exactly where those resources go. Let's talk to Mackie, your organization, Sino. Audrey touched on briefly just the importance of people understanding what is being said and put out into the ether. Can you talk about, the genesis of your organization, why you found it appropriate and timely to do what you're doing, you and your team do now?
Absolutely. First, thank you very much for having me. We are celebrating about 7 months of being an organization that has really taken on a life of its own. It began with an email from a woman named Jane Aiken, who is a law professor from Georgetown University. And basically, she sent out an email to about 10 people, and it said, we have to do something. I know everybody is hiding in their, in their beds with the covers over their heads because, let's face it, that election was very disheartening. And for those of us who were active before that, it was such a loss, just such a great loss. And I think there was a lot of depression and fear about coming out and speaking, especially because a lot of the rhetoric was cruel. I know that I was hiding in a way. I grew up in Charleston. A lot of people that live here that I grew up with are very conservative. And it was intimidating. But I got this email, and I thought, wow, if she has the guts to send this email out telling us that silence is not an option, I'm on board. So the email got passed along a little bit, and they were expecting about 50 people to come to the meeting, and over 350 people showed up. Wow. To the very first meeting, and we broke into groups and figured out exactly which issues were important to us. And then we met as groups, and then she said at the end, okay, now take your groups and go do something. Well, there were about 6 of us, including the co-director, Elizabeth Colbert Bush, sitting right here. And separately, we all went up to the powers that be from the first meeting, and we said, whoa, this is unbelievable energy right here. And we got to tackle, and harness this energy and move it forward. So 7 of us created Sino, Silence is Not an Option, and we started collaborating and creating monthly speakers. And we had a senatorial candidate forum with question and answer. We're having, every month we have a speaker, so we have an event series. And we are really focusing on educating the public about the truth. What's really happening? You hear, one thing, and then you turn your channel and you hear a completely different thing. And we really wanted to get to the heart of what are the facts? What's really happening out there? How is it really impacting our community? And what can we, as what has turned out to be 1,000 women, and we say and allies because gentlemen are certainly welcome. It did start out as a women's group, but Jimmy comes to our meetings, and we're growing by leaps and bounds. We started as kind of the angry grandmas, I like to say. Because at first it was just all women over 50. And that really wanted to make sure that there was a better world out there than what was currently taking place. So we have been working diligently to bring programming to Charleston, and we also are doing monthly pop-up protests around Charleston.
I wanted to ask you about that really quickly because you, first of all, the fact that you started you're so young, and yet there shows there's an urgency and a need for this kind of conversation and awareness. But I want to ask you about the protest because when we were talking, you said that you would think First Amendment, no problem, let's just make it happen. That didn't happen that way. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So we're in a very conservative place right now. And we are all trying to allow our voices to be heard. And so when we went to apply, and this is not just me, this is anyone who would be considered the resistance. We go to apply for a permit to protest, and we would get a permit, but basically baby was put in a corner. We were put in a park where there were almost no passers-by. We were put in another park kind of across from the police station that, it's way off the beaten path of where we wanted our voices to be heard. So we're sitting around, this group of 7 of us who, it's a powerhouse. I'm the least of it. I'm telling you, these women are brilliant and so well educated, and all of them are movers and shakers, and somehow the collaboration just bloomed. So we're talking and we're thinking, how do we deal with this? Well, if you want to protest, you only have to get a permit if it's more than 24 people.
Okay.
So we're thinking, and we had an aha moment, and we thought, what about doing pop-up protests all over downtown Charleston in the biggest places we could be seen, like the steps of the Customs House and in front of City Hall, and some locations had a theme, some didn't. Or don't. But we created these monthly pop-up protests, and it was groups all over the city that pop up for an hour on the second Sunday of every month, and 24 people in a group, and we stay the correct distance away from each other so that we are not thrown in jail.
Wow.
And
I was going to ask, what do you do if other people start to get, it's like, hey, I want to do that, I want to do, well, what do? You just make sure you're...
The other day, we had a few too many at the Customs House, and there were 2 police cars parked really near where we were protesting. Wow. And so about 6 of them, because we were 6 over, went the correct distance, and they just created their own pop-up protests. Wow. But it's so neat because people walking by the Customs House, we have extra signs just in case. And people are we're getting honked and cheered, and for every negative, there are 20 positives.
That's awesome.
In response, which has certainly helped fuel the fire.
Yeah.
And then when people walk by and they're really excited about what we're doing, here, have a sign. We're only 23 right now. We need an extra person. Yeah. And so we are popping up and making statements and making sure that our voices are heard, and collaborating with many other grassroots organizations to make a difference.
That's fantastic. Okay.
Which is also unique.
Yes.
Because usually it's a little dog eat dog in the community.
Yes.
With nonprofits, you're trying to raise money.
Yeah.
And, I've never seen anything like the collaboration between these groups in the Tri-County area, including Somerville. I mean, we're all talking, we're meeting with different people, we're working together. And I'll tell you, I'm starting to see it change.
That's great. Because I do. I feel like that's a sign of collaboration. I think everybody knows we need to work together at this point. Now, Mr. Bailey, I have a question for you.
First of all, my father was Mr. Bailey. I'm Jimmy.
Excuse me, Jimmy. I want to get just a quick, before I ask you your other question. How do you feel as someone who was a former politician, you were in the State House, and to hear that people are not able to protest in that way? Just what are your thoughts about that?
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's unconstitutional, since this is called We the People.
Yes.
Let me read it. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. I think that's what I believe, and it's mind-boggling to me. Now, having to divert a little bit, I was thinking just recently that when I was in the legislature, I was a Democrat, and it was the Republican Party was just beginning to gain strength, but it was a different world. 124 members of the House of Representatives. I would say that maybe a handful were those that I just didn't care to be around, and that they would probably fit in with the crowd today, but not quite, but almost. And the civility is just gone in the legislature and in Congress, and it's all because of one person. And so it bothers me tremendously that, maybe a handful back then, but today, 50%, 75% are out of their minds. And which goes to the next thing is that I was going to mention today, your vote counts. And that's what you're all about, and you're all about. Your vote counts. When I first ran, I won by 17 votes in the Democratic primary. And I thought that was unbelievable, 17 votes. Well, yesterday, the mayor of Isle of Palms won by 1 vote.
Wow.
So every vote does count. And don't forget that. Every vote counts. And so we need to do our part in educating the community and unfortunately, I don't think the best people run for office anymore in South Carolina. The annual salary is $10,400 a year. Now they do get a substance, but still, I went into the legislature with $250,000 cash in the bank. No mortgages. When I got out 6 years later, I had zero in the bank and mortgages. Because one of my daytimers, I don't know what I did with it, 85% of my appointments had to do with constituent services. And the editor of the Post-Courier called me and said, how you feel about legislators getting a raise? Now, this was years ago. And I said, well, I don't think that that's a bad idea. She said, why? You only part-time, and you only in Columbia from January to June, Tuesday through Thursday. And I said, well, Barbara, I'm in my home right now, and I'm not up in Columbia. Call me back when I'm in Columbia. So it's a tough thing.
Yes.
And what these ladies are doing and others to educate the community is just so important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because so often when you are people who run for office, you have to have means. I mean, and if you don't have means, then who gets in power? Who wants to protect their power are those types of people. But that leads me to the question about your work as the founder of YEScarolina, because you're all about helping people find a clear pathway to entrepreneurship and economic independence. So just talk about the creation of YEScarolina.
Well, when I was in the legislature, I got put on a mailing list from Hillsdale College. Every month I get a copy of the newsletter with the speaker of the month. I got to say that 99 out of 100 don't leave the post office when I get my mail. But in November 1998, one came, the topic was solving the problem of poverty. I was very poor growing up. And so that has always been something that I was interested in. So I went back and read the speech by a guy named Steve Mariotti. And if I live to be 200 years old, I will never forget this part of it. He said, I know a secret that is fully understood by government, business, and community leaders could possibly have an enormous positive impact on the future of our society. The secret is simply this: low-income children are born with special gifts and talents that prepare them for wealth creation and business formulation. They're skeptical of hierarchies, accustomed to stress, not afraid of failure, creative, and full of chutzpah. In short, they have street sense, or what we like to call business smarts. I read that speech for 4 years, and I called him and I said, can I come take, this guy had started a nonprofit called the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. And they taught teachers how to teach entrepreneurship in New York City. So I called and said, can I come take the training? I'd like to see about bringing it back to my community. And the young lady at the switchboard said, what do you do? I said, I'm a commercial real estate business. We don't take your kind. And I said, well, you mind if I send you my resume? And they called me back within 15 minutes. And I went up and took the 4-day training course in February of 2002, coldest I've ever been in my life. But in those 4 days, what I learned, I think, equaled what I learned 4 years in college.
Wow.
And it was powerful. So I came back to Charleston, and Tommy Baker, he really is responsible for pushing me to get this done. And so, as you pointed out, this young man right here is a perfect indication of what someone can do and where they can end up. Mm-hmm. So helping poor people has always been something that is very personal with me.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about what is happening in terms of the political landscape And I ask because there are a number of key political races that are happening, that are coming up. You mentioned the mayor's race, but there's also the Senate and gubernatorial races. And do you think a lot of people are aware of these races, and why or why not? Do you want to start, Audrey?
Sure. So we have a group of people that I think are aware. Our focus areas are education, equity, advocacy, and economic mobility. And in the advocacy space, for the last 4 years, we've had a statewide coalition known as Pro-Truth, where we are focused on censorship, the initial work that we did, but a lot of people in this room we're connected to because organizations came together. You talked about collaboration, and I remember, it was a Tuesday night during COVID, and we were like, our state superintendent had said something around censorship and what we were and not going to teach. And, our position is that there are families that you're representing who are not able to have their history embraced and taught in the classrooms where my children are sitting every day. And from there, it's just been, if you think about legislative 21, 22, 23, and here we are in 25, we're preparing for the second second year of this current session. And what are we going to do? And we just brought people together and talked about it. And we always laugh because that evening we, talked for maybe an hour and a half. Pro-Truth was born. We were ready to get off the phone. And we were like, looking at everybody leave the Zoom, and nobody left. We were like, okay. But what is still apparent today is that there are people who are concerned, but how do we continue to grow that? And so Pro-Truth has grown. We've done 4 legislative sessions. We didn't really think as an organization we would get into advocacy this early. There were a lot of other well-funded, well-meaning organizations that were around, but didn't make the connection that it was little then. And if you don't really say something now, it's going to continue to grow. And by the time it gets to where we are today, you're too late. You're behind. You're behind the 8 ball. And so we're just excited to be able to continue that work. Because of that work, we were able to respond to some things even locally through a group called Movement 400. And so going to your question around how do we continue to make people aware? Even last year, we were trying to bring people's awareness around local school board elections, which are just as important. Our school board elections, those individuals are managing a $500 million budget. They're determining anything from where my child goes to school to what is being taught in the classroom, with some of them have little to no education or expertise in that area, and or are not examples of people I want my child to look up to. And so we had 16 different events last year. We had 3 community conversations. We outreached to 3,000 individuals. And I only predict that we'll continue and build on that work. Great. And it's just, how do you bring that to, from the, 50,000 foot level down to the, all the different grassroots organizations? How do we look forward to collaborating? But how do we continue collaborating so that we're on, people have the information that they need, they know where to go. Even if you register individuals, how do they get to the poll? So mobilizing people, and there's some other things that we're working on behind the scenes, but it's really about how do you break down this process. And we had Schoolhouse Rock, right?
Oh, right.
Y'all remember Schoolhouse Rock?
I know I'm dating myself, but Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill. I'm just a bill.
But you'll be surprised that a lot of people just don't, they're intimidated by going to the State House.
Yes.
So we do sessions online around what do you need to do? You have 2.5 minutes. You need to prepare your statement. You need to rehearse your statement. So we've brought parents up to the State House or students. We have college students that are part of this. We have librarians that are part. And this past March, there was the DEI bill as an example, and it was a hearing. And it was just, I was almost in tears, just the fabric of South Carolina that was represented. We had people from the upstate. We had, someone who looked like they were, camping in the outback. We had, we had college students. We had professors. We had teachers. We had individuals who had grown up in impoverished environments. And, 3 hours, 4 hours worth of testimony. Wow. And I was in a meeting later on and someone was saying, I was just fascinated by all these people, and it seemed to be just by osmosis that all these people showed up. And I was like, it was not osmosis. It's a lot of work to get all those people there. But and everyone was on message. And it was just like clockwork, they were within the time. No one went over time. And so you have to bring that process to the people. Yes. And then once you go once, you're a pro. You're not intimidated by the legislature.
That's right. But there's nothing scary about you, Jimmy. but that's exactly what grassroots organizing is, and that's what it looks like.
Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for part 2 of the conversation next week.